the heaven and the earth came to existence, what was I? Before the heaven and the earth came to existence, what was I? Before the heaven and the earth came to existence, what was I? Dharma friends and practitioners. Practice meditation, emphasize practicing. Our practice method is very simple. Just ask the question. From asking the question, raising down, and continue to ask the question diligently, maintain down. Doubt will lead the practitioner to the before thought. Doubt lead the practitioner to the base of the ignorance, base of the suffering. And also the doubt will cut off the attachment, discrimination, cut off all of the illusion and suffer all kind of suffering. So the practitioner should believe in his own mind, believe in his own mind, and maintain down that practice. Enter với thầy.
Dear Dharma friends and all practitioners, today is a Sunday, the 22nd of June 2025. We continue the topics in a weekend, and this week the topic is the reminder for practicing. So the reminder for practitioners in practice is to help everybody to practice and continue to practice diligently. As a student living in normal life, they always have a goal and they always have the reminder to help them to study, encourage them to study. So the encouragement is coming from their relatives, their parents, and from the teachers. So as practitioners, we have the reminder from the patriarch, from the Buddha, from the Dharma friends. They always there to help us and remind us to practice and show us the right way of practice so we can realize our own mistake and help us to progress in practice. So as a student outside, because of that reminder, because of the encouragement, they focus on the study more and they will reach the goal eventually. So as the practitioners, we always have the reminder for us to practice on the right track and continue to walk toward our goal. So if we have any questions now or want to share your own experience in practice, go ahead and speak up. I have a question. Go ahead, Pháp Hỷ. I'd like to share my experience recently. Dear Master, recently my practice, usually when I'm walking and do the meditations, I feel like the elusive thinking is always arising, and I just come back to the practice. Sometimes I have the thinking of a really happiness in practice. I feel like the Huato, like a boil for us to hold on to. And the practice cut off all the elusive thinking in the mind. And I just come back to practice and continue to practice. And I feel like no thoughts can stay in my mind. And when I feel like a worriness in the thinking, then the practice feel like helping it, the practice helping me to sweep up all the thinking, and I have the feeling of happiness in my mind. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just the feeling that I had. So let me explain to you. Those are just the achievement that we have in the practice. Any feeling of good, bad, right, wrong going on in the mind, we just continue to practice. Previously, when we having these thinking, we have a tendency to go after them. However, when you practice for a while, you realize that all of those elusive thinking are not true. So you just come back to the practice. The pre-thinking aspect of mind had no right or wrong, good or bad. In our practice, when we reach some levels, we feel like we achieve something. When we taste, when we have a taste for our practice, then we feel like no feeling of good or bad. We feel like emptiness is so good to be in, and sometimes we attach ourselves to that emptiness. However, in the practice of the patriot, our masters always remind us, no matter what thinking, good or bad, they are just the stealing thinking in the mind, we don't attach ourselves to them. When we still having those thinking in the mind, which means we still in a dualistic aspect of the mind. When we having those thinkings, sometimes practitioners, they attach themselves to those thinking. They attach themselves to the achievement that they had during the practice. And if we keep attaching ourselves to those, then those good happiness thinking will become the sad, depressed thinking if we don't have them anymore. So any thinking going on in our mind, just come back to your practice, asking questions and raising doubt. Good or bad, progressing or not progressing, ignorance or no ignorance, just ask a question and raising doubt, and all of those thoughts will be disappeared. As a practitioners, we need to overcome all of those elusive thinking in the mind and come back to the practice. We need to believe in our own Buddha nature, believe our Buddha nature based on the practice, not on the attachment to the elusive thinking. Just come back to our practice. Continue to practice asking questions continuously, diligently, and just do so. Is that understandable? Yes, thank you. I'd like to ask for another question. Usually, my habit at night when I come back to my room, I listening to your Dharma talk, because in the morning, sometimes when I'm listening to your Dharma talk, and at night, I also listening to your Dharma talk. And recently, I feel like I just practice and I don't feel like I want to listen to your Dharma talk at night. And just practice, I don't have thinking of listening to your Dharma talk anymore, but just go back to the practice. Is that okay? When you have a schedule in your practice, you follow your schedule. We don't try to do it, but we always follow that schedule that we set up for. Our ignorance, our habit is always there to interfere with our practice. That's why the Buddha said that we need to have a schedule in practice so we can cut off all of those habits and ignorance, all of those elusive thinking in the mind. And when we can sweep up all of those thoughts, which means we detach ourselves from all of those desirement. So even when you feel like really tired, really fatigued, You still follow the schedule. You don't let your mind control your actions, but you in charge of your own action. You keep the practice and keep on practicing. Don't let the habit of ignorance steering you away from your practice. That's why when we have an assumptive mind, a conclusive mind in any of these situations, which means we stay away from the right practice. We still attaching ourselves to something. So when you feel like it enough, when you feel like you achieve something and you attach yourself to those thinking, which means you go on the wrong path, your mind will have the right way of practice, the wrong way of practice going on in the mind and interfere with your practice. That's why we always practice. The Dharma talk is only the reminder for us to go back to the practice. Is that understandable? Tâm, go ahead. Go ahead and turn on the mic.
Dạ kính thưa thầy và kính thưa đại chúng. Dạ thưa thầy, con có cái tư duy về thầy hay nói là
I have a thinking that you usually say that when you're doing a patriot Zen practice, we entering the practice of the stream of practice. The doubt is the thinking want to know but couldn't answer the questions. And that's why that wanting to know and the nothing to know from the doubt, they conflict with each other, and it becomes the doubt. When we have the doubt, all of those realms going on in our mind, all those thinkings in our mind, they disappear really fast. When we still realize that the thinking disappear really fast, which means we still in the knowing aspect of the mind. Is that so? Could you explain? Our mind is always have that differentiation or discriminations in everything. And when we practicing throughout practice, we realize that those elusive thinking start to arise and disappear. In the dualistic aspect of mind, nothing is very clear. The birth is a cause for the death, which is the effect. Everything depends on each other, and they cannot be independent. Our mind always have the right or wrong going on. And that is the dualistic aspect of mind still going on in our mind. So when we still living in a normal life, we couldn't realize that the thinking is going on in our mind. We couldn't realize that. However, when we start to practice, we realize that the elusive thinking is always there. However, we just go back to our practice, and our practice will lead us to the roots of all those thinking, and eventually we will be able to break off that thinking process and realize our own Buddha nature. This is why the Buddha, the patriarch, always remind us the knowing is the door of all of suffering. So we heard about this several times before. We didn't pay attention. However, the more we practice, and when we're listening to the Dharma talk, it's just like a reminder for us to realize these elusive thinkings are still going on in our mind. And the reminder to help us to go back to the practice so we don't attach ourselves to those thinkings in the head. Just like the sick patriarch, when he listening to a verse of sutra in Diamond Sutra, when you're not attaching to anything, your mind, your miracle of the mind will appear. So he got enlightenment from just that verse. When you already had this practice from previous lives, and the collective practice from previous life will help you in this life too, and help us to get enlightenment just by one verse in the sutra. If we don't have that collective practice, we need to start our practice from this life and continue to practice until we reach that state of mind and break ourselves off from those thinking and see our own Buddha nature. So just based on our practice, we walk toward our goal, which is the enlightenment. Don't attach ourselves to anything in the mind, but use them as the reminder to go back to our practice. The practice will lead us to the enlightenment. It's just like you need to eat in order to release your hungriness. You cannot eat for somebody else to get rid of the hungriness. Is that understandable? Yes. Thank you. There's questions in the questions in the Zoom. When we have a thinking in a mind, which means we living our practice already. When we studying and practicing Buddhism, we stay away from those thinkings. When we start to have a thinking in the mind and we don't come back to the practice, we start to attach ourselves to those thinking. When we study philosophy in our school, the philosopher always have the way of explanations, have the way to help us to understand certain circumstances in life. However, those thinking, those knowledge, and those explanations are just words. They are not the real life experience yet. This is why the Buddha, when he explained about anything in his Dharma talk, he always destroyed them later on. So no practitioners or disciples should attach to them. So, example, when he talking about the circle of birth and death, he explained about it. However, after that, he said that if you want to get rid of the circles of birth and death, it's not only the understanding of the words or explanations from the Buddha, but you must practice in order to reach and experience that feeling of stay away from the circle of birth and death. So in our practice, sometimes it depends on people, the saints or normal people, they practicing the same methods. However, one will use the words to continue to practice, and the other one attach to the words and forget about the practice. When you're doing the practice, you're using the applied prajna, applied wisdom to reach your observation wisdom to go back to your Buddha nature wisdom. It's just like you using the enemy soldiers to siege the headquarters of the generals, enemy generals, and capture the the enemy general. And another example is we know our disease, we need to take the medications according to the prescriptions from the doctor, and here we have to follow the doses assigned for us in order to cure our own disease. That's why the Buddha doesn't want us to define any state of mind, but practice to reach that state of mind. We practice and eventually we will liberate our mind, liberate ourselves from the thinking in the mind. So the questions from Kevin, I explained like that. If you still have questions, go ahead and continue to ask. Kim In, go ahead.
Dạ, Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Con kính thưa quý thầy, quý sư cô cùng tiên nữ đại chúng. Quý thầy, khi chiều con nghe trên băng của hòa thượng khai thị.
This afternoon, when I listened to Duy Lực Zen Master Dharma talk, and I listened to a nun asking the questions. When the nun practicing, she just want to practice, and she feel like she want to stay away from all the circumstances from outside, anything going on from outside. She just want to stay in her room, isolate herself from practice. So the master told her that when you say about something, your actions and your what you talk have to go together. When you talk a talk, you have to walk the walk. He criticized this nun because she can only talk, but she didn't have any action accordingly. So could you give us some explanation about this? So when you still attach yourself to the words, you still attach yourself to the understanding without the practicing, which means you can only talk the talk, but cannot walk the walk. So when a practitioner still have the attachment on what need to do and what not need to do, or what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, they still have attachment to something. It's just like when we're talking about the birth and death, it's just because of the birth we have the death, and the other way around. When you reach the ultimate of happiness, expect there will be the sadness waiting for you. So when you still living in the dualistic aspect of the mind, the knowing and the not knowing will not affect you at all. So doesn't matter when we practicing anything going outside of us, any situations or circumstances going on, we don't attach ourselves to them, but we just come back to the practice. We don't isolate ourselves in a room and do the practice without trying to hide ourselves in the room. When we can practice anywhere, any places, in all circumstances, which means we doing the practice in the right directions. For some people, sometimes they can talk the talk, but they cannot walk the walk. They still cannot deal with their dualistic aspect in their mind. Just like Tô Đông Pha and Phật Ấn Zen Master, when Tô Đông Pha said that all eight suffering wings won't change him at all, won't affect him at all. When he making a poem about the 8 kind of winds of sufferings won't affect him at all, and send it to Phật Ấn Zen's master. And when Phật Ấn read his poem, he just wrote down a smell of the fat 3 times like that, and sent it back to Tô Đông Pha. And Tô Đông Pha, when received that letter back, the response letter back, he was angry, and he went to Phật Ấn temple and complained to Phật Ấn about the criticism from him is not right. So Phật Ấn Zen Master said that you said that the 8 types of wind of suffering won't affect you at all, but just the 3 smell of fat I wrote down have brought you to my place and criticized me. So Tô Đông Pha was very embarrassed because of that. So when we listening to the Dharma talk, we need to go back to the practice. When we can talk the talk, we need to walk the walk. We need to go back to the practice, asking questions and raising doubt. Doing the practice truly is not the suppressions or try to suppress all the thinking in the mind. Just asking the question normally, continue to practice, and anything going on in the mind, any elusive thinking in the mind will be swept up automatically by the doubt. When you ask the questions clearly and diligently, when we got the explanations, sometimes we attach to that explanations of clearly and diligently in practicing. And when we attach ourselves to those words and thought that we achieve something in our practice, which means we are not going on the right path. Just practice. Don't attach yourself to anything going on in the mind. Is that understandable? Thank you for your words. When Rilek Zen Master explained in the Dharma talk, sometimes I could understand. However, sometimes the master explained using the words, but the meaning is not in the words at all. So thank you for your explanations. we're running out of time.